Hey guys, how are you? Wei Koh from Revolution magazine. Hello, bonjour, ciao ragazzi, assalamu alaikum, habibi, shalom, and ni hao. To our international audience around the world, it gives me great pleasure to announce our latest collaboration in terms of our limited edition program for watches, and it's with Bulgari. It's a Bulgari chronograph, and I want to talk to you a little bit about that, but the first thing I'd like to talk to you about is Bulgari as a brand. And I think we're all super impressed from them in terms of what they've achieved this year, in terms of an incredible fair in Dubai with the LVMH group, of launching the Octo Finissimo in steel with a screw-down crown that's 100 meters water resistant, in terms of setting a new world record with a tourbillon chronograph automatic, which is an incredible watch. But what's impressed me the most about Bulgari this year is the underlying ethics of the company, and that has a lot to do with one man in particular, the CEO, Jean-Christophe Babin. So what did Bulgari do this year that was so impressive? Well, the first thing that they did was they donated a 3D microscope to Spallanzani Hospital in Rome, where they could study the virus on the cellular level. The second thing that they did that was really impressive was amid the breakout of the pandemic in Italy, and as you may recall, it was a very dire time, they took one of their scent factories and they actually changed this scent factory into a factory to create hand sanitizers and sanitizers in general. And again, in the context of today, it's a little bit more commonplace that everyone's got access to hand sanitizer, but you may recall the shortage that everyone was suffering initially, and I think that was an incredible move on their part as well. And I know they distributed thousands and thousands of bottles of that, even in the initial weeks. And then the last thing that they did, which was so impressive, was at the behest of Jean-Christophe Babin, they created a virus eradication fund. This fund is giving medical scholarships to researchers to help eradicate viruses, not just now, but in the future as well. And also, Bulgari supported and helped to fund the vaccine that's being done at Oxford University in England. That's why I love Bulgari. I think today when you have the opportunity to buy something, what you're doing also is making a statement about the world that you would like to live in and of the brands that are making the world a better place. And I really think Bulgari is that kind of brand. So as you guys probably know, the Octo Finissimo was launched in 2014. And since then, in the 6 years it's been in existence, it has created an unparalleled record of technical achievement, right? So you've got the world's thinnest automatic watch, the world's thinnest tourbillon, the world's thinnest minute repeater, the world's thinnest automatic tourbillon. Check this out. The automatic tourbillon, the entire watch is 3.95 mm thick. And you've got the world's thinnest automatic chronograph tourbillon, which was launched this year. Now, what's so impressive about this is it's not that just Bulgari just decided to go redefine and re-energize the ultra-thin category. They came up with an all-new and completely different design, and that's the Octo Finissimo. When it was launched in 2014, it was just mind-blowing in terms of this dynamic tension between something that was very muscular on the wrist, that had great presence at 40 mm, but then when you turned it on its side at 5.15 mm, which was the automatic version of it, it was almost unbelievably thin. And the incredible thing about this is that to create this kind of watch, you need to have in-house competences in every single aspect of the watchmaking. So for example, the dial on the Octo Finissimo is 0.2 mm thick. Those are in the titanium dials. The painted ones are slightly thicker, but 0.2 mm is actually thinner than most indexes, right? So if you are trying to get a dial manufacturer to outsource for you a 0.2 mm thick dial, it's just not going to happen. So you need to be able to have that competence in-house. In-house dial making, in-house movement making, in-house case making, and in-house bracelet making are all of the different aspects that make the Octo Finissimo possible. And the fact that Bulgari dedicated all of that to creating this incredible watch, that to me is just really remarkable. I'm really proud to talk to you about our latest limited edition, and it is a version of the Bulgari Octo Finissimo GMT chronograph, featuring the in-house movement VVL318, which is 3.3 mm thick, and the entire watch is 6.9 mm thick. So when I saw this watch last year at Basel Fair, which was incidentally the last Basel Fair in existence, I shall now take a moment of silence to weep for the sausages. Okay, moment over. So, when I saw this watch, I was blown away. As you guys know, I love chronographs, and I love ultra-thin chronographs, you know? And I guess for the longest time, it was the Frederic Piguet 1185 that held the record as the thinnest chronograph movement around, thinnest automatic chronograph movement around. So it was 5.5 mm thick. As you guys know, the configuration of that is column wheel, vertical clutch, central rotor. But when the BVL 318 came out, dude, this movement was incredible, right? Column wheel, laterally coupled, and it's very interesting. You'll probably have seen it already, but if you look at the back of the watch, if you look at the movement, you'll see that the bridge, that is the coupling bridge for the chronograph, is set very close to the chronograph center wheel, driven directly by the seconds wheel of the watch, and then the coupling lever is just, it's really short and compact, so it efficiently places the drive wheel right into the chronograph wheel with a minimum of movement. I think it's really cool. Then what's really cool about it also, it's got a peripheral rotor. So a peripheral rotor is a rotor that takes up the space around the movement rather than on top of it. All of these things put together create a movement that's 3.3 mm. But the thing that I really love about the watch itself is the design of the watch, right? So what's really cool for me is that every time Bulgari adds a complication to the Octo Finissimo case, it does it in a way that integrates all those other pushers in a really elegant way. So when you look at that watch, when you look at the Bulgari Octo Finissimo Chronograph GMT, the pushers for the stop, start, and the reset are placed in exactly the right position where initially you think that maybe they're just crown guards. Same thing for the pusher for the GMT function, which is actually quite similar to the pusher in the minute repeater, just on the left side of the case, but beautifully integrated. The result is just kind of a more muscular and sexier version of the Octo Finissimo until you realize it's got this incredible function to it. So when I saw this watch, I absolutely loved it, but then I started thinking about, would it be possible to make really kind of a tool watch version of this, because it's the perfect, elegant gentleman's chronograph. I went and approached both Mr. Babin and of course my dear friend Fabrizio Buonamassa, the head design honcho over at Bulgari and a fantastic dude, and I said, what do you think? Do you think we could try this? And they liked the idea. So we began experimenting. So the first thing that we did, of course, was to put a tachymeter on the bezel. Now I know that there's another Octo Finissimo with a tachymeter on the bezel called the Velocissimo, right? That's with the Zenith El Primero movement, but it's very different. That's a much thicker watch, and the bezel is much thicker as well. For them to engrave and imprint the color of the tachymeter precisely and to make it very clear on the bezel of the Octo Finissimo, it really took a lot of skill and a lot of experimentation in order to achieve this, because that bezel is so thin, right? Then on top of that, we were like, I think if we're going to make this a sports chronograph, like a real tool chronograph, we need to make it luminous. And that's where we had the biggest problem, because the indexes and hands are just too thin to apply luminous material to. So Fabrizio said, leave it with me. I'm going to think about it a little bit. And then, he called me up and said, I have an idea. And I said, Fabrizio, tell me. And he said, why don't we make the entire dial luminous, and then all the indications, the seconds, the counter for the minutes, the counter for the hours, and actually the time itself will appear completely visible, but just in relief. And I said, dude, I love this idea, right? Like, I know it's been done on watches before. I think there's been watches that have had fully luminous dials, but to put it on a dial that is 0.2 mm, to apply that much luminous material to it so that it glows perfectly in the dark, that was the challenge. And thankfully, as I mentioned before, Bulgari has in-house dial making competence, and so they were managed to do it. So without further ado, I want to show you our watch, and I want to explain to you a little bit about the design process. So this is the watch, and I'm very proud to display it to you. So, what I like about it is that when you look at it, it looks like just a really cool sporty version of the Bulgari Octo Finissimo Chronograph GMT. It's got this white dial, and I love chronographs with white dials. I love for example, the Mitsukoshi Speedy, the Silver Snoopy, Daytonas, I guess, have white dials on it as well, especially the porcelain dial versions of them. I think they're really cool. But so when you look at it initially, you're like, wow, this is a great looking white dial watch with a tachymeter. And it kind of transforms the whole identity to have it in this kind of colorway and with this tachymeter as well. But I think the cool thing about this watch, and this is my favorite thing, is when you're in direct sunlight, it just kind of looks white. But as soon as you go into ambient light, you'll see that it starts to glow. And then when you go into the darkness, it just is fully on fire. Which of course means it's not maybe the subtlest watch in the world, but it's really fun, And it's funny too, because I know there's been a lot of watch brands that have been playing with kind of light signatures for watches as they go into a nightclub or a dark bar or what have you. And to have a little bit of kind of light signature on your watch has become kind of a thing. But this is full on, you can't miss it. If you're at a bar, you're going to be able to tell the time on that person's watch. You can probably tell what the chronograph reading is if that person's activated the chronograph. And is there an application for a chronograph in the dark? You tell me. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the design process now, because when Bulgari decided to undertake this, when specifically Fabrizio Buonamassa decided to undertake this, he's like, let me work on a couple of different dials. So He actually worked on several luminous dials, ranging from super luminous to kind of, I would say, medium luminous. The thing that we love best about this dial was that it looks pretty much like a white dial most of the time until you go into ambient light or until you go into the darkness, in which case it starts to glow. And I think that to have that kind of split personality, to have that Jekyll and Hyde thing where it looks like a really discreet gentleman's chronograph and then it's fully on fire in the darkness, I think is really cool. And it's kind of like a little bit of a surprise, and I dig that. But we also worked on another version of it as well. So we are calling this version of the watch White Heat, because Fabrizio and I both love the 1968 album by the Velvet Underground, White Light, White Heat, with its titular song, White Light, White Heat. But we also worked on a different dial as well, which we have codenamed the Nuclear Dial. And the Nuclear Dial has the maximum of luminova on it, and it's this watch, right, as well. Now, we decided not to produce this version of the watch because even though it was really fun initially, and it's great to have it like, you know, kind of fully luminous, it's pretty much at full speed, 100% lume, all the while, all the time. And after a while, it gets a little bit distracting. Like, I dig it, but I think that as a daily watch, and if you're wearing it all the time, it starts to become a little bit overwhelming, but I don't know, I'll leave that to you guys. But anyway, these are the two versions of the watch. And in the end, we decided to go with the white light version, which is the watch that you see here. Initially, the watch was meant to be made for the 15th anniversary of Revolution, so we were going to make 15 pieces. But then when we started looking at the watch, all of us wanted to buy one. And so within just the Revolution team, we'd already sold like 5 of them. So we decided to increase the production to 25 pieces, which in absolute terms is not a ton of watches. It's still a very rare watch. It's one of our favorite limited editions because so much thought and so much experimentation went into it. And the last thing is, based on my sort of initial statement about what Bulgari is as a company today, it just makes me happy to have this on my wrist because it's really dope watch, if I can say. It's got an incredible sort of take on an already very cool watch, but it's also made by people whose underlying ethics are something I really admire, and I think that's really important. So guys, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you like the watch. If you get one, please DM me images of it at Wei_Koh_Revolution on Instagram, and I'll post it. And of course at revolution.watch on Instagram as well. Thank you so much for joining us, and peace out, dudes.